The parched wind of Pentos carried the sour tang of sea rot, and the sharper stink of tar from the shipyards. But Jorah Mormont scarcely noticed any of it. He had spent 3 years in exile breathing the dust of eastern streets, yet every sunrise still surprised him with how foreign the light seemed. Too bright, too gold, like coin freshly struck. That coin had never stayed long in his palm. Bribes vanished as quickly as they were earned. Wine bled silver from his purse, and the soft-voiced courtesans of the free cities were as costly as they were eager to pretend he was still a lord. Only the letters from Varys, written in the weightless hand of a man who never hurried, reminded him of who he might become again if he played the game precisely. Mormont. The name clanged inside his skull like a hammer on distant iron. His father had worn it like plate. Solid, unstained, impossibly strong. Jorah wore it like mail dredged from brine, every ring rust-scarred, each weld threatening to part with a careless motion. The memory of Jorah Mormont's disappointed silence, more cutting than any shouted rebuke, often woke him before dawn, the timbre of that silence lingering even after the heat of the Associ day pressed down. He spent the early hours at Illyrio Mopatis's manse, moving through corridors heavy with incense. Illyrio enjoyed a languid indolence, lounging among fragrant cushions while slaves fanned perfumed air around his girth. Yet beneath the excess lay a mind sharper than a brave Ossi dagger. Illyrio never locked eyes without weighing what he saw there on some invisible scale. That morning his small black eyes followed Jorah, as servants laid platters of figs and spiced boar before them. "Have you grown weary of my hospitality, sir?" Illyrio asked, voice smooth with false generosity. Jorah kept his own tone as bland as the watered wine in his cup. "I remain ever grateful, Magister, but work suits me better than comfort." "Work?" Illyrio's chins trembled with a chuckle. "You sound like a man searching for absolution, not coin." Perhaps he was, though absolution would cost more than even Illyrio could pay. Jorah managed a polite incline of his head. "I seek only usefulness." Illyrio's smile curled, feline. "Usefulness, yes. Well, usefulness can be arranged." A meaty hand drifted to a carved ebony box beside him. "Have you ever held a piece of true wonder, Sir Jorah?" He flipped the lid. Inside lay a dragon's egg, its shell a lattice of jade and tarnished copper scales, each one limned with lines of smoky quartz. The lamplight caught on the facets and seemed to breathe within them. The sight hollowed Jorah's chest. Tales told by Mormont hearthfires came rushing back. The dawn of flame-born kings. The song of wingbeats over Blackwater Bay. Stories Jorah had worn like a cloak. Weighty yet warm. Jorah had sat enthralled, boy's eyes wide, never guessing that one day a dream so ancient might sit within arm's reach, silent and cold. Illyrio stroked the egg with fat, ring-studded fingers. "A curiosity for my collection," he said. "All innocence. Stone, of course. All the true fire was snuffed out long ago." But Jorah wondered, was it? Heat seemed to twist off the shell, subtle yet undeniable, as though the egg held a secret ember waiting for breath. He swallowed. "That," Illyrio continued, "is one of 3, a gift for a girl who believes in miracles." And Jorah understood. Daenerys Targaryen, the timid child queen propped upon Horse Lord's shoulders, revered by sellswords who whispered that dragons might yet soar. Varys had spoken of her in coded phrases, of spilt blood and broken wheels, of a realm longing for song again. The spider would want his knight close to her. "Are they safe?" Jorah asked before he could stop himself. "Safe enough," Illyrio purred. "Though wonder tempts thieves more fiercely than gold." He closed the box with a soft click, the sound of a tomb sealing. "I guard them well." That afternoon the notion took root. It was a heresy, a madness, and it grew. Steal a dragon's egg. Place it before the Iron Throne like an offering. Bend the knee and beg the king's pardon. Exiled son returns bearing myth itself. Even Robert Baratheon might pause before an artifact older than his line. And if not Robert, then perhaps another branch of power might bargain. A dragon's egg would buy friends in every court from Old Town to Winterfell. It might even buy forgiveness from a father. Forgiveness. The word burned hotter than the Essos sun. For a week, he watched the manse with Hunter's patience. Illyrio's guards were numerous but complacent, accustomed to idle nights and softer threats than a desperate night. The Magister housed his wonders in a squat, windowless tower, abutting the garden of stone lions. Slitted openings high on the walls would bleed crossbow bolts if any intruder tried the main gate. Yet the roof was tiled, not shingled, ceramic squares slick with bird droppings, but loose in places where sea storms had shaken mortar. Jorah spoke little during those days, drank less, and slept hardly at all. Memory replaced rest, his wife Lynesse laughing beneath the weirwoods of Bear Island, her hair catching the last rays of sunset. He had lost her purchase price at the tourney in Lannisport, and debt had driven him into poaching forbidding forests for Braavosi slavers. The shame was a fetid well he had never climbed out of. Each recollection tasted of iron and salt, of the flayed pride he carried like raw skin. On the 9th night he climbed. No moon lit the sky, only ragged clouds skidding across starlight. A rope of braided horsehair, purchased from Dothraki traders whose women valued strong knots, hung from his belt. He scaled an almond tree by the garden wall and sprang to the parapet in silence. Below, the lions stared with stone eyes through the dark. He crept from gargoyle to gargoyle until he reached the tower roof. Tiles wobbled beneath his boots. He wedged a dagger under one, pried it loose, set it aside without clatter. A second tile, a third. Soon a gap yawned wide enough for his shoulders. He wriggled through into blackness. Dust choked the narrow crawl space between roof and ceiling. His lantern remained shuttered. He groped forward on elbows, following beams until he reached the central shaft where the tower's heart opened below. Faint torch glow licked up from seams in the boards. Through a crack, he saw the Chamber of Wonders. Shelves upon shelves glimmering with relics. A silver harp strung with gut. The polished skull of a kraken babe. Glass candles rumored to hold the night sky itself. And upon a pedestal at the center rested the ebony box. Jorah felt sweat bead beneath his tunic, though the night air was cold. He worked a hinge pin free, then another, easing plank from plank until an aperture large enough to drop through became a silent invitation. Balancing on groaning rafters, he looped the horsehair rope to a crossbeam, let it slither down unhindered. The trick would be speed and softness both. Touch nothing but the prize, stir no dust to drift upon a guard's torch. He descended hand over hand. His boots kissed stone soundlessly, the silk-wrapped soles he'd devised exactly for this. Up close, the box was larger than he'd realized, each facet of ebony worked with patterns reminiscent of dragon scales. Ruby studs winked at the corners. He knew the lid's mechanism. Spring-latched, cunning, but no match for a thin blade inserted just so. Illyrio's grandest protections were for show. The real defense was fear, the sense that only fools would reach toward myth. The lid opened, and there it was again. That subtle warmth, as though a candle burned within the shell. He braced for the egg's weight, far heavier than stone of similar size, Illyrio had bragged. When he lifted it, the heft seemed to settle into his bones, pulling at his shoulders. He cradled it within a lambswool sack sewn for the purpose, nested in layers of linen. From the corridor below came the scrape of a stool, a guard bored enough to reposition himself. Jorah froze, listening, breath and knife edge. Footsteps faded. He exhaled, tied the sack to his belt, and climbed. The rope swung when he reached halfway. Jars clinked faintly on distant shelves. He waited until the air stilled, then hauled himself into the crawl space. He replaced the planks, slid the hinge pins home, and drew the tiles snug again. By the time a patrol torch flashed across the roofline, he was already among the lions, descending the garden wall. Outside the manse he donned a merchant's cloak and walked the moon-paled streets to the ramshackle house he rented near the port. Only when the door latched behind him did he unbundle the egg. Firelight from a single candle danced over its surface. Greens deepened to viridian. Copper edges glimmered like a dawning sun. He touched it with reverence and dread. Could stone breathe? The scales seemed to shift under his fingers, adjusting minutely to the warmth of his hand. A low hum vibrated through his palm, or perhaps through his mind. A note so ancient it defied description, an echo of wings beating before men had words. He thought of Bear Island's iron-gray shores, of pine spires, and salmon-rich streams whispering through mossy stones. He imagined carrying this egg across the sea, presenting it to the king, to his father even, laying it at Jorah's feet like a prodigal son returning not empty-handed but bearing a miracle. Would that miracle erase poisoned memories of shame? Would it matter if the shell never cracked, if it remained merely promise? Jorah slept not at all. At dawn, he visited the harbor. Pentoshi galliots rocked against salt-streaked pilings, their sails furled. He found a Taroshi captain willing to accept a knight's word of future payment in exchange for passage to Braavos. Jorah would gamble on hiring a faster vessel from there, perhaps even one bound directly for White Harbor. Speed was essential. Illyrio's wrath, once discovered, would reach across oceans. When he returned to his lodgings, the door stood ajar. He'd left no sign of forced entry when departing. A hush rode the stairwell, too still, as though the building itself were holding its breath. Jorah drew steel. Inside, the small room had been untouched, save for the trunk beneath the window. The trunk's lock lay shattered, its lid yawning open like a silent cry. The egg, wrapped in lamb's wool, remained exactly where he had hidden it under spare tunics, yet someone had seen it. A smear of dried mud marred the linen folds. The trespasser had not dared to take the prize, but they had uncovered it, gauged its value, perhaps left to summon allies. Jorah reglocked the door. Those splintered hinges offered scant security, strapped the egg to the small of his back beneath leather, and packed light. He left coin for the landlord despite a petty urge to claim it. Such gestures mattered, he told himself, though the woman would likely curse him for the trouble. The Tyroshi vessel, Vasar's Mercy, set sail by midday. Wind billowed purple sails emblazoned like a golden fish, and the hull's timbers groaned like waking beasts. Jorah kept to himself among the salty-stained crew, stowed in a cramped aft cabin where water seeped through seams, each drop carrying the stink of bilge. He lay nights with the egg against his chest, feeling its faint pulse as though two hearts beat within him now, one of failing flesh, one of sleeping fire. Some nights the wooden walls seemed to warm with it, and the air took on the scent of scorched cedar. On the fifth night, a storm rose with little warning, the sky splitting under knives of lightning. Waves hammered the hull, flinging crew across slick decks. Jorah helped reef the foresail, rope burning his palms raw daily. In that chaos he realized the egg was glowing faintly through the fabric, scales shimmering with each flare of lightning. A deckhand slipped, eyes catching on the glow. Fear widened them until whites flashed brighter than the storm. He crossed himself in the manner of Lys and backed away. Superstition spread like rot in wet wood. By dawn, whispers crawled the length of the ship. The exiled Westerosi knight bore a cursed stone that drank thunder. The Taroshi captain confronted Jorah privately. He would brook no demon cargo. Jorah offered coin he did not have, sworn service he could not promise. The captain, wary yet tempted, agreed to finish the voyage for double the original price, payment due upon docking in Braavos died. Jorah nodded, already rehearsing lies about hidden funds. But the distrust remained. Sailors spat in his wake, painted wards of the many-garmed goddess upon doorframes. Jorah kept his dagger close. The storm left seas swollen and sluggish. Progress slowed. Each day the egg's warmth increased, as though some hidden ember fed upon the lightning skip. Jorah felt it seep into his spine where the shell pressed. Dreams of fire haunted his sleep, the crunch of ironwood beneath titanic feet, the hiss of snow melting in sheets beneath vast wings. He would wake sweating despite the chill, cabin lanterns swaying above him like pendulums marking an hourglass he could not read. 3 days from Braavos, a merchant cog flying Myrish colors drew alongside with too much purpose to be happenstance. The mermen hailed that they had cargo to trade, rare olives, wine black as heart's blood. Vasar's Mercy slowed, suspicion clinging to her rails. The cog's sailors bore no barrels, only weapons half hidden under cloaks that billowed in the wind. Grapnels arced. The pirate flag unfurled, a leering kraken crowned with a scarlet sun. Battle rang out across the waves. Jorah fought among Tiroshi who cursed him only hours before, blades slick with brine and blood. He had forgotten how song-like steel sounded when it found flesh, a haunting chord that lingered in the marrow. A pirate's axe bit his shoulder. He roared, spinning the weight of the egg at his back, shifting his balance yet lending him a strange ferocity, as though dragonfire whispered guidance to his limbs. He plunged his sword through the man's gut and felt ribs grate against the crossguard. Amid the clash, he saw a figure clad in wine-red mail-making straight for him. Eyes fixed not on Jorah's face but on the bulging leather beneath his cloak. Somehow they knew. He parried the first stroke, slipped on blood-sleek planks, nearly went over the rail. The pirate pressed, twin daggers flickering like forked tongues. Jorah's shoulder burned hot where the axe wound ran, his arm weakening. He feigned retreat, then smashed his pommel into the pirate's nose, bone crunching. One dagger skittered away. The second nicked Jorah's thigh before he twisted the man off balance and hurled him into the sea. Tentacles of crimson blossomed in the water, soon lost beneath thrashing hulls. By sunset the pirates were driven off, leaving 20 dead upon Vassar's decks and a mast cracked nearly through. The captain, face ashen, demanded to know what prize invited such pursuit. Jorah could offer no answer that would not damn him further. He tended the wounded through the night, binding his own gash last. When morning came he stood at the bow, salt wind sharp in his lungs, Bravos a faint smudge on the horizon. But smoke also smudged that horizon, farther north, drifting like a black omen across pale sky. A second vessel burned, its corpse listing, carried by currents toward the Titan's shadow. No survivors waved from deck or sea. Varys' reach, Jorah suspected, or Illyrio's vengeance. If they could not reclaim the egg, they would see to it none did. Braavos accepted them, as it accepted all seeking coin. But watchful eyes followed Jorah through the canals. He paid the captain with gems, lifted many months prior from a Volantine fence. Gems worth half a lordship, but worth more as silence. From there he found a Lysian smuggler who promised swift passage through the narrow sea, skirts of storms permitting. The man preferred payment in secrets. Jorah gave him half a dozen names whispered by Varys, names of men in King's Landing who dallied with treason at their cups. It felt a betrayal less than theft, and he had become practiced at both. Before departure, he visited the Sea Lord's market district. The egg swaddled in thick wool that could not muffle its pulse. He bought new blades, Braavosi steel, lean and lethal, and a small iron brazier with coals trapped inside, ember warm. The merchant said the brazier would stay hot 3 days if fed sparingly. Jorah did not know why he bought it. Some instinct urged that should the egg's fire grow, it would hunger for flame beyond flesh. That night, in the privacy of a rented garret above a weaver's shop, he removed the egg from wrapping. It glittered in lamplight, each scale alive. Carefully he placed it in the brazier. The iron hissed, coals brightened. Heat billowed, not unbearable, but intense, licking his face as though greeting a long-lost kin. A crack, faint as mouse teeth gnawing wood, split the silence. Jorah stared. Another hairline fissure traced itself between scales, glowing dull red within. Panic clutched him. If the egg hatched now here, every city bell would sing alarm. He snatched it out, pressing it to his chest to spite the scald, and the fissure cooled, closed, leaving only the memory of heat. The egg was deciding, it seemed, whether the world was ready. He dreamt then of Bear Island again, but not as it was. Dragon shadow swathed the forests. Glaciers melted, torrents carving new rivers that smoked with steam. He stood amid the ruin, Lyness beside him, her eyes mirrors to the flame growing overhead. She whispered that forgiveness was a myth kinder than truth, and then she vanished in cinders. The Lysane's ship, the whisper, slipped from Braavos beneath misty sunrise. Its hold smelled of old wine and stranger contraband, milk of the poppy, ivory figurines shaped like the carved men of Yeit, powdered leaves that could kill or cure depending on preparation. The captain, Coadarais, spoke little, preferring the hush of a man riding perilously between tides of law. Yet Jorah noticed how often his gaze sought the leather pack. Others noticed too. Always there were others. Crossing the narrow sea proved slower than promised. Fickle winds forced long tacks northward. On the 12th day, a gull alighted on the bowsprit, a herald of Westeros so tangible that Jorah's throat tightened. He fed it a shred of salt pork and whispered a prayer to the old gods, though he doubted they heeded men who abandoned their vows. But the gods older knew, answered of a sort. That night sails loomed astern, dark against moonlit foam. A war galley bearing Lannister crimson taught, gold lions on the wind. Coast crew scrambled. No outrunning a pride of king's ships in these waters. When the galley drew abreast, trumpet calls demanded surrender in the king's name. Jorah gathered the egg and his sword. The brazier lay cold and dark at the foot of his bunk. He left it. On deck sailors knelt, hands raised. Lannister men boarded, chainmail clinking. Their captain, a young knight with hair the color of fresh straw, called for the smuggler's manifest. Jorah leaned against the mast, cloak concealing the prize. One lion guard caught his eye. "You, remove your cloak." Jorah shook his head. "I am a sworn knight of Westeros, traveling under seal. A century ago that might have carried weight." The captain strode forward. "Your seal, sir?" Jorah presented the broken wax of an ancient letter from Jorah Mormont, one he'd read until edges frayed. No seal of passage, merely a father's final missive of disappointment. The captain's lip curled. "Bear Island's honor counts little, since its lord's heir sold poachers to Tyrosh." He gestured and men advanced. Steel rang. Jorah disarmed two before the third slipped behind, cracking a club across his skull. Darkness swallowed the deck. When he awoke, chains bound his wrists. The egg gone. Torches flickered overhead. Dungeon of the war galley, bilge water lapping. Co-adderies lay across from him, nose swollen to a blood-purple bulb. "They took it," the smuggler rasped, as though Jorah needed telling. Footsteps approached. The young captain descended, egg cradled in both hands, expression shifting between awe and greed. "A pretty stone," he said. But his voice hinted he knew it might be more. "Lord Tywin pays handsomely for curiosities, and more for leverage. What shall he pay for this?" "Nah, Guru. Tread lightly," Jorah warned, head throbbing. "Some stones hatch." The captain laughed. "Tall tales for children." Yet sweat glossed his brow despite the chill. He left, locking the grill. Jorah watched him go, mind racing. He had failed again, lost the one currency that might buy absolution. Yet something told him the game was not done. The egg would not rest in Lannister vaults long. Its pulse would not be caged. That night, a muffled boom rattled the hull. An explosion? Shouts raced above. Smoke seeped through planks. Ko stumbled to the bars. "Fire," he hissed. "Below, the powder stores." Sabotage or accident, Jorah cared not. Flames were friends to dragons. He slipped chains under his boot heel, about to wrench when a jet of smoke issued from the keyhole. The iron glowed red, lock melted. The cell door sagged open as though invited. Above, chaos reigned. Sailors hurled buckets hopelessly. The captain clutched the egg on the quarterdeck, panic wild in his eyes as deck planks curled blistering heat. Jorah mounted the ladder, loose chains dangling like shed skin. "Give it to me," he commanded, voice deep as the sea's own thunder. The captain backed toward the rail. "Stay back or it goes into the water." Jorah advanced. Flames licked the sails, sparks rained. The egg shimmered, scales alive with ember light. It seemed to drink the fire, glow swelling until the captain's arms trembled from the heat. Smoke filled Jorah's lungs, yet he breathed deeper. "Water quenches fire," the captain croaked, desperation cracking his voice. "No," Jorah answered. "Fire births fire?" He lunged. The deck bucked. The egg flew from the captain's grip, arcing, not toward sea but onto char-blackened planks. Wood sizzled. Scales flared dazzling white. A shriek, neither human nor wind, split the night. The deck ruptured. Flames spiraled skyward in a fiery column. From its heart, something emerged the size of a large dog, wings unfolding wet and trembling. membrane shining silver green, eyes slit like molten copper. It stumbled, shrilling hunger. The newborn dragon. Panic turned to terror. Men jumped overboard. Jorah knelt, chains clattering, hands outstretched. The hatchling fixed on him, nostrils flaring, as though scenting the scent that had guarded its shell. It crept closer, uncertain. "Dracarys," he whispered, though unaware he knew the word. A tiny gout of fire belched forth, catching his torn sleeve. He laughed, a raw, incredulous bark, even as he patted out the flame. The dragon cocked its head, curious. A final groan announced the galley's death. Jorah scooped the hatchling against his chest, scales scalding yet bearable, and leapt for the nearest skiff. Tar-coated rope seared palms. He swung over water that churned with drowning men. He landed atop casks, dragon clutched, chains now weights dragging at his arms. He hacked them free with a boarding axe as the galley behind them exploded, fireball lighting the narrow sea like dawn. The skiff drifted, sails shredded, oars missing. Jorah tore planks loose, slimming mast to fashion makeshift paddle. He wrapped the shivering dragon in the remains of the cloak. Smoke smeared the stars overhead. Embers rained like orange snow, hissing on the sea. Dawn crept gray, coastline jagged as a saw blade rose from mists. Cape Kraken, if his bearings held. Ironborn raiders haunted those shores, but beyond them lay White Harbor and passage north. The dragon stirred, tongue flicking. Hunger emanated from it like heat. Jorah checked his pouch, dried meat, hard cheese. He tore a strip, offered it, needle teeth grated, accepting. "I will call you Storm," he murmured, then reconsidered. A name carried power, perhaps more than he understood. He remembered old Nan's tale of the first Jorah, Bear King of Skagos, who bound a wyvern to his will and rode the gray winds. Legend said the creature answered only to drummers beating skins, stretched from men who dared harm its rider. Nonsense, yet names lingered. Ghostfire, he tried. The dragon chirruped, indifferent. Names would wait. Survival first. He rode, arms aflame with exhaustion, but each splash drew them nearer to Westeros. The scent of pine replaced brine. Gulls cried overhead. At dusk, surf hurled the skiff onto Pebble Beach. Jorah staggered ashore, dragon clinging to his jerkin. His wound reopened, blood speckling stones. Ahead stood a tumble of black spruce, and beyond that, perhaps a hunter's path or pirate's track. He trudged inland until firewood begged gathering. Night fell. He built a pit, set flame with flint. The dragon settled beside the blaze, eyes reflecting the dance. Sleep claimed him. He dreamed of Jorah, standing beneath a heart tree heavy with snow. The old man regarded the hatchling at Jorah's shoulder, stern gaze thawing into wonder. "You bring an old song home," the Lord Commander said, voice hoar as winter wind. "But know the song will ask its due." Jorah woke shivering despite both fires. The dragon watched him, wings mantled. Dawn again. He fed it slivers of rabbit snared before sunrise. It ate greedily, flame curling from nostrils each time it swallowed. Heat spread through Jorah's chilled limbs, welcome and alarming all at once. Footsteps cracked twigs. He rolled, sword drawn. Two Ironmen emerged, reavers by their driftwood crowns etched into leather jerkins. They eyed the dragon and grinned, teeth brown with rot. "Pretty pet," one sneered. "Fetch a chest of coin in Kingsmoot." Jorah's smile showed no mirth. "You'll need your tongues for counting it." Steel met steel. The dragon sprang, shrieking flame. One Iron Man's beard ignited. He screamed, flailing. The other swung an axe wide. Jorah caught the haft with mailed forearm, drove pommel between the man's eyes. Bone cracked. Silence returned, punctuated only by the hiss of burning flesh. The dragon sniffed the corpse, interest piqued. "No," Jorah commanded. It retreated, but reluctance sizzled in its gaze. They pressed inland. Hills gave way to rolling heather, then to the green quilt of the North summer fields. Jorah skirted villages, wary of talk, following a man with scaled shadow. Yet rumors already whispered ahead. Small folk spoke of a winged devil devouring flocks, of balefire in the skies north of Flint's Finger. Fear might clear his path as surely as coin once had. Weeks passed, measured by the dragon's growth. Wings broadened, body lengthened. Soon it perched on Jorah's shoulder with difficulty. He hunted elk to sate its hunger. Each midnight feeding glowed brighter, until the very trees seemed etched in ruby by the furnace of its throat. They reached the banks of the White Knife at last. White Harbor's walls loomed across moonlit water, harbor lights shimmering. Jorah crouched within reeds. To enter openly risked Septon, guard and rumor racing to King's Landing before he could reach Bear Island. Yet winter threatened, and passage by sea would prove swifter than trekking icebound moors. He considered the dragon beside him, now large as a mastiff, wings twitching eagerly at every gull overhead. A sail captain might take them for coin. None would take them quietly. Unless a Manderley owed an old debt to a Mormont. Long ago, Lord Tristan Manderley had sought Jorah's counsel during a grey plague that struck the city. Jorah sent healers and oat bread from Bear Island's scant stores. Jorah had called it duty, not boon. Yet duty forged debts even when none were claimed. Jorah pulled a patch of driftwood close, scratching a symbol known to northern lords, the bear in the wood. He placed it upon a floating candle lantern, set it adrift. If Manderley still watched their rivers as they once did, the message would reach them. Hours passed. The dragon dozed, curled like an embered whip. Dawn pinked the east, when oars parted the mist. 4 guardsmen in Manderley livery. Their captain, a broad-shouldered woman with hair bound in an iron net, hailed Jorah softly. "I am Willa Manderley," she said. "We tend guests who honor our sigils." Her gaze drifted to the dragon with a mixture of fear and awe. "But I must know, is this creature tame?" "No," Jorah answered truthfully. "But it knows me." She nodded after a heartbeat. "Then come under cover of fog. My lord will hear your petition." Within White Harbor's secret quay, they disembarked. Fish smell and salt, mixed with summer flowers, hung from balconies. Jorah wrapped the dragon in sailor's cloak. It thrashed at confinement, but stilled when he murmured a lullaby Liness once sang. A bittersweet memory repurposed. Lord Wyman Manderley, heavy in brocade, awaited in a marble hall edged with tapestries of seashells and hunting scenes. His small eyes widened when Jorah laid the dragon bare. Green copper scales shimmered under candlelight, wings unfolded with lazy menace. "7, save us," Wyman breathed. "Is it true then? Dragons live?" "Live, my lord," Jorah replied. "And might serve. I seek passage to Bear Island, no more. Help me, and the Manderleys shall share in whatever fate this creature bestows." Wyman's jowls quivered. "King Robert will brand this treason. Then brand me alone," Jorah said. "I was treason's child long before today." Silence stretched, broken by the dragon's chuff. At length Wyman sighed. "My debt to your father weighs heavier than crowns. You shall have a ship under the Merman's flag, swift and silent." That night Jorah stood upon the dock once more, boat rocking below. The dragon perched on stern rail, tail lashing like a cat's. Wyman approached. "Sir Jorah," he murmured, "whatever you intend, know that songs will sing of this." "Songs are for men who finish their stories," Jorah answered, stepping aboard. Wind filled sails toward the sunset. Bear Island waited beyond storms and long memory. An isle of stone and snow-clad firs, of hearths Jorah had not earned. The dragon, unnamed still, spread its wings to the rising breeze. Sparks danced from its nostrils, caught, and winked out against dark waters. Jorah watched them fade, heart heavier than any egg of stone, yet hotter with purpose than ever before. He had stolen a legend, and legends did not forgive lightly. But perhaps, beneath the howling pines of home, a bear could teach a dragon how to forgive a man, if not the man himself. Okay. The voyage north beneath the Merman's flag began in midsummer's waning, when the evening sky smelled of kelp and fledgling storms crept across the sunset sea. The cog Wyland's Grace carried a token crew. Willa Manderley herself at the helm, 2 sharp-eyed sailors sworn to her, a broad-shouldered ship's cook, who had once been a poacher on the rills, and beneath the slatted hatch of the forward hold, a creature born of the world's oldest songs. Though Willa called the vessel a trading craft, its lines were too lean, its sail too taut, and its oars too ready for mere commerce. Even so, Jorah felt exposed whenever he glanced astern, half expecting crimson sails, or the crowned stag blazon to appear on the horizon. His dragon, he had begun to think of it as his. Though truth whispered it answered only to its own hunger, grew more restless each day. At White Harbor it had been the size of a mastiff. By the third sunrise at sea, its wings spanned nearly twice that. Scales hardened from pliant enamel to ridged armor, shading deeper from jade to forest shadow, and along its spine jagged nubs sprouted, promising thorns of bone. Jorah fed it charred cod, and the hearts of shorebirds speared with his crossbow at dusk. And still it prowled the deck when lanterns burned low, eyes phosphorescent in the dark. "You'll have a storm before dawn," Willa told him the first night, studying cloud veils that bled silver across the moon. "And maybe guests trailing the wind. Word flies swifter than crows when it carries fire." He nodded but kept his silence. They stood at the prow, sea spray diamonding their hair. The deck behind them slept, save for a lone helmsman. Lower, in the hold, the dragon hissed softly at coiled rope, dissatisfied with confinement. "It needs a name," Willa murmured, surprising him. "Things without names wander strange roads." "I named it once," he answered, voice low, "and it turned its head away. Then try again." He considered that as waves slapped the hull. Names had power in the north. They carried the weight of ancestors. "Skulldrake," he tried aloud, recalling a mythical worm said to haunt the silver pine. The dragon snorted, a crackle of smoke escaping its nostrils as though sneering. "No," Willa chuckled. "It wants something true." True. Nothing about his life since exile felt true. He closed his eyes, searching memory, his mother's voice singing him to sleep, the distant crash of surf on Bear Island's black beaches, Jorah's firm hand guiding his first sword stroke. A word surfaced, old tongue of the first men. Shara, meaning dawnfire, the glimmer on the eastern horizon that hunters followed home. "Shara," he whispered. Within the hold, claws scraped wood. A pause. Then a resonant trill, softer than its usual rasp, almost acknowledgement. Willa smiled. "A name likes you back, sir. Best honor that." That night, the storm broke. Wind howled like krakens in rut. Sails snapped and groaned, and rain lashed decks with whip-sting ferocity. Jorah lashed Shara's cage to the mainmast, but iron bars shuddered under each roll. Lightning revealed the dragon pacing restlessly, wings buffeting the wooden slats. Fear that she might torch the ship warred with awe as he watched flame gutter in her throat each time thunder boomed. By second bell, a wave taller than masts hammered Wyland's Grace broadside. The cog heeled, barrels smashed free, and the world went sideways. In the chaos, a coil of anchor chain slipped. The cage iron latch fractured, and Shara exploded into the rain-swept night. Sailcloth ignited where she brushed it. Willa bellowed orders, men scrambled with wet cloaks to smother sparks. Jorah nearly plunged over the rail, pursuing her. He caught the rigging, swung, landed hard on the Eocosal roof. Through sheets of rain he saw her clinging to the yard arm. Wings unfurled, eyes wide not with rage but terror at the storm's roar. Lightning split the sky again, and the flash painted her silhouette. Sails ragged behind her, ocean boiling below. He climbed, boots slipping on soaked rope. Wind tore at him, salt stinging his axe wound's half-healed scar. An arm's length away he reached out. "Shara!" he called above the gale. Another flash showed her head whip, pupils narrowing. She bared needle teeth but did not strike. A boom cracked as the yard gave, splintering under her weight. Together they fell, tangled in rigging that snapped taut, leaving them dangling above froth-white sea. Pitching deck rose toward them. Rope burned Jorah's palms as he gripped tighter. Shara's talons slashed, not at him but at the cords trapping her wings. He braced a boot against the yard, freed a knife, and sawed. One strand parted, then another. Finally the net yielded and she dropped to the deck, landing amid shattered crates. Crew shouted. Flames sputtered where lantern oil spilled. She swept wings, snuffing fire by sheer wind. Jorah crashed beside her, breath knocked from lungs. For a soul-stretching heartbeat, they simply stared at one another while rain hammered down. Then she nosed his cheek. Hot breath against his skin, and folded her wings around them both like a cloak. He realized she was shivering, afraid, just as he was. When dawn limped over smoldering clouds, the storm had limped eastward. The cog's mainmast sagged but held. Jorah roosted in the remains of the cargo hold, tail curled, eyes slitted in exhausted sleep. Jorah and Willa inspected damage. A cracked yard, half the freshwater barrels lost, and 2 sailors swept overboard in the night. They paid the sea god in place of us, Willa muttered, making the sign of the merman. She eyed the dragon dourly. Next storm you pen her below decks in shackles, or the sea will claim us all. Jorah was awake by noon, prowling the stern as men retied stays. She sensed their fear, her nostrils tasted it, and her tail flicked with irritation. But she obeyed Jorah when he bade her perch upon the aft castle, watchful as a green-scaled sentinel. They limped northwest. At times gulls followed, but at others ravens circled, dark wings, sharp eyes. Once, near dusk, Jorah glimpsed 3 black sails on the horizon and thought them Lannister. Yet when dawn came they were gone, perhaps illusions born of exhaustion. A week out of White Harbor, the air chilled. Breath puffing in clouds. The broken tooth, a dagger-shaped rock spiking from gray water east of Bear Island, loomed at sunset, its top crowned by ice-rimmed gull nests. Waves dashed white against its base. Children's tales claimed the tooth was the splinter of an ancient dragon's fang, broken in the world's infancy. Now it served as guidepost for sailors braving Bear Island's treacherous shoals. From the prow, Jorah watched home emerge. Forested cliffs smudged in fog, pines tossing in wind that smelled of resin and snow, though autumn only beckoned. He had seen 10,000 exotic harbors, but none twisted his gut like this rugged silhouette. Home, Daw, and exile's end, or its cruelest reminder. They anchored in a shallow cove where stone steps led up to a watchtower. Willa stayed aboard to oversee repairs, sending Jorah ashore with 2 oarsmen bearing supplies. Jorah glided above, riding thermals like a silent green kite. When she wheeled inland, villagers below scattered, and distant dogs howled. Atop the cliff, a figure waited, broad-shouldered, clad in sealskin, and mail-mottled green, with patina Lady Maeg Mormont, head of House Mormont since Jorah had taken the black. Gray streaked her bear-pelt braids. Her eyes, black as peat, held no warmth. A dozen spearmen flanked her, shields painted with the black bear of the island. Jorah knelt, helm tucked under arm. Cold seeped through knee leather. "My lady," he began, voice thick. She studied him as though assessing a stranger. "What brings the exiled son of Bear Island to these rocks again?" He rose slowly. A hope for redemption. Thunder clapped inland, only his heart, though it felt as loud. "I bring a gift that might win forgiveness, and perhaps salvation for the north." At his whistle, Jorah descended, wings lashing wind. She landed behind him, folding wings with a crackle like sailcloth. Gasps rippled among the guards. One man stepped back, spear wavering. Maeg's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Illyria's rumors were no mummer's tale then," she said softly. "Dragonfire on Bear Island." She strode forward, barely flinching when Jorah sniffed her cloak. "Have you brought doom upon us, nephew?" The word cut deeper than any spear. "I bring a chance," he answered. "A weapon against Lannisters or worse." He thought of tales carried by fishermen of white shadows in the northern night, of a darkness beyond the wall. The world is changing. So it is. Maeg circled the dragon, inspecting scales, talons, the healed fissure where shells still clung at the breast. "And what price does the world exact for such power? I offer myself to pay it." He met her gaze squarely. "Whatever punishment Father decreed, I will bear." but let me serve our house again. Many. Silence lengthened, broken only by gull cries and the dragon's slow breathing. Finally, Maid gestured. Come. The courts of House Mormont will weigh your case. And the beasts. She eyed Jorah again, lips twitching. I've never presided over a trial where the accused breathes fire. Should be lively. They ascended a mountain goat trail, zigzagging cliffs. Pine resin perfumed the air. Jorah followed on foot, claws clicking rock. At times, she leapt onto jutting ledges and glided ahead, only to circle back if Jorah lagged. At the summit, Bearkeep rose. Stout walls of granite quarry from the island itself, roofed in gray slate, banners limp in scant wind. The main gate opened with a groan. Within, the courtyard bustled with armsmen, crofters delivering peat, and children gawking at Jorah. One lad threw a stone. The dragon flared wings, flame dancing at her lips. Jorah barked a command in harsh Valyrian. She stilled, but charred the stone until it glowed red before letting it drop. The child fled to his mother's skirts. Inside the hall, torches guttered against carved beams, where old bear skulls hung in tribute to hunts past. At high table sat not mage, who took lesser seat, but a wizened priest of the old gods clad in moss-green robes. Gray roots of beard tangled at his chest. Beside him a raven perched upon the armrest, eyes like obsidian orbs. Jorah recognized the man, Maester Harad, once of Winterfell, sent here decades ago. Age bent him, but his gaze was keen. Sir Jorah, Harad greeted, voice papery. We have heard whispers of your return, and of shadowed wings. Tell us why you come now. Menes. Jorah recounted the theft, the voyage, the storm, the hatching compressing months into minutes. He spoke nothing of Daenerys. Us politics mattered little here, nor of Illyria's designs. But he named the Lannister war galley, and cashed fear into the hall. Tywin's eyes already sought the dragon. When he finished, the hall murmured. Mage raised a hand. Dragonfire may shield our shores, but it will draw enemies tenfold. What say you, tribunal? The priest lifted a raven feather quill, though he did not write. The old gods speak in leaf and flame, Harad intoned. This beast was wrought by fire, that is both life and ruin. His raven cawed. Weigh ruin heavier. Jorah looked to Mage. Ruin comes whether we invite it or not. If Lannister galleys sail, they will sack Bear Island for our ironwood alone. Better to greet them with dragonfire than with empty hands. A Thane leaned forward. Can you control it? Truly. He swallowed. I believe my dragon listens, he said, refusing to glance aside lest nerves betray him. But control. No man controls a storm. Yet one may ride the wind. Harad's chair creaked. And will you ride this wind where? To father, Jorah said. The word father felt foreign after years. Lord Commander Mormont sits the wall. Night gathers and rumors speak of worse than Lannister gold. If dragons once beat back darkness, perhaps one might again. Meg's fist struck table. The wall is not Bear Island's charge. Our spears guard these shores. You would carry our single greatest strength away? Strength unused is slaughter, he answered. Jorah will know to wield it. Debate raged. Some feared Baratheon reprisal. Others saw chance to wrest pride back to House Mormont. A messenger interrupted. Ravens from Deepwood Mott. Lannister prowships sighted off the rills, sails red in the dusk. The hall erupted. Ultimately, Mage rose. Enough. Blood beats at our gates. My sister, Alysanne, rides a longship vanguard returning from harvest raids. She'll shadow any Lannister fleet. Meanwhile, Jorah will take the dragon north. She turned to him. Prove your worth. Guard father's wall. When winter ends, we shall see if redemption holds weight. He bowed low. Relief mingled with dread. Willa's grace would not serve. Jorah could not abide weeks at sea, confined. Instead, Maeg offered a land path, sledges across the frozen flats of the shivering shore. Then dog teams through Wolf's Wood's edge, then upriver to Queen's Crown, and north upon the King's Road. 100 leagues of wilderness and watchful eyes. Preparations spanned 2 days. Jorah refused harness but accepted to follow above, and sometimes pad through snow. She hunted seal. Bears fled her flame. Villagers began to call her Frostfire Drake, and small folk left offerings of fish charred black. Primitive worship, or placation. On the dawn of departure, Mage clasped Jorah's good shoulder. "Bring no further shame," she said, quiet enough only he could hear. "Our house will not weather another stain." He answered with a nod and mounted his Geran. The sleigh creaked behind, laden with salted meat, furs, and a slim iron chest containing Mage-written pardon. Conditional, but a seed of hope. Ahead the trail wound between frost-silvered pines, each step crunching like brittle glass. Jorah soared overhead. Her shadow skimmed the snow like a living arrow. Children waved until mothers dragged them indoors. Jorah tasted their fear, and hoped the darkness beyond the wall felt it too. They made camp beneath a canopy of ancient spruces. Snow fell fine as sifted flour. The men slept in shifts. Jorah dozed curled around the sled, wings shielding supplies. Jorah sat near the fire's dying glow, turning the iron chest key over and over in numb fingers. He thought of Liness. Did she wander still among eastern pleasure houses, or had time consumed her face from memory? Would she know him now, leaner, older, shadowed by a dragon? He doubted it. At second watch a howl rose, not wolf, but something deeper, colder. Even Jorah's head snapped up, frill flaring. Beyond firelight, tall shapes moved between trees, pale and silent. Jorah stood, sword sliding free. From the gloom, eyes glowed ice blue. He had not believed tales carried south by frightened rangers. Dead men walking. Yet here they came. 3, perhaps 4, emerging with languid grace, flesh white as moonlit bone, armor glimmering frost. One bore a spear of crystal that caught starlight. Jorah shouted, and men sprang awake, but fear froze them more than cold ever could. Jorah hissed, flame building in her gullet. The nearest white burst from underbrush, jagged claws lunging. Jorah hacked its arm away. No blood flowed, only snow dust. The thing kept coming. "Dracarys," he cried again, though voice broke on the strange syllables. Jorah loosed a torrent of emerald fire. Snow hissed to steam, trees blackened. 2 whites collapsed, limbs charred to ash. But the crystal spearman strode through flames untouched, frost aura quenching edges of the blaze. Men screamed, scattered. The other leveled its spear. Jorah parried with Valyrian steel. No common steel, useless. The spear's tip slid past, grazing his ribs with chill that burned worse than flame. He staggered, breath frosting. Jorah clawed, but ice blossomed across her forelimbs where the spear scored. She shrieked in pain, landed hard. Jorah's vision tunneled. He saw the dragon falter, doom writ in hoarfrost across her scales. Anger roared louder than fear. He hurled himself at the other, grappling. Its flesh felt brittle, hard. Every touch numbed. He wrenched his dagger free. A blade mage had pressed into his boot. Rippled steel dark as midnight, edges swirling with shadow. A family heirloom? He hadn't paused to admire. Now he drove it into the creature's throat. Steel met crystal, then slid through like wind. The other gasped soundlessly, and cracks spidered through its torso, light pulsing within. It shattered, glass crashing on snow. Silence thundered. Remaining whites fell slack, as though strings cut. Jorah limped to his side, ice melting off scales where internal heat returned. Later, by dawn's pale glow, Jorah examined the dagger. Valyrian steel, of course. The Mormonts possessed one ancient blade, but it had vanished with his grandfather. Mage concealed more than she spoke, it seemed. He cleaned rime from blackened edge and tucked it close. The encounter altered the company. Men whispered of dead things and living fire. Jorah commanded new reverence. So did Jorah, who had faced a demon of winter with only steel and stubborn will. Cold fear rode with them, but so did purpose. They crossed the white knife near its frozen estuary where ice bore their weight. Wolves shadowed them. Jorah caught one, devoured it whole. After that, the pack kept distant. At Molestown they found the hamlet half deserted. Folk fled south, claiming shadows moved in the woods. At Castle Black Ravens wheeled under slate sky. Jorah halted outside the gatehouse, heart hammering. A horn sounded. Black brothers lined the ramparts. Direwolf banners flew alongside the watch's zone, as news of Winterfell's rising tension reached them. But personal histories rose higher than politics now. The gate creaked. Out strode Jorah Mormont, Lord Commander. Broad and straight, despite age. His beard had grown white. His eyes, never soft, were stern as granite. Behind him, Samwell Tarly and Bowen Marsh hovered, gaping at the dragon descending in a gust of snow. Father and son faced each other. No words yet. Shara circled overhead like a green comet before alighting on the frosted ramp. Brothers stumbled back, cries of "Gods preserve us" echoing. Jorah gave the beast one assessing glance, then fixed on Jorah again. "I had hoped the rumors were lies," he said at last, voice carving the chill. "But you always did go to impossible lengths to avoid the easy road." Jorah knelt, ignoring pain lancing his side. "I come seeking atonement, and with a gift that might turn winter's tide." Jorah studied him, silence stretching. Then slowly, he extended a gauntlet-clad hand. No hug, not yet. But contact. Jorah rose and clasped it. Warmth flowed. Awkward, bruised, yet real. "We'll speak inside," Jorah said. He glanced up at Shara, who tilted her head curious. "Bring your gift, if you dare. The wall's old stones have seen stranger, though not in living memory." They passed under the gate. Crows whispered. Snowflakes drifted, and Shara's talons sparked against ancient rock. Above them, the wall soared, blue ice catching feeble sunlight. Beyond it, white lands waited, and things more terrible than Lannister fleets. Jorah felt the weight of that horizon, but for the first time in years, he did not shrink. Fire walked beside him. Blood bound him to this place. And perhaps, just perhaps, the long winter would find Bear Island's exiled sun ready at last to pay its due. Inside the old bear's solar, the fire crackled stubbornly, but could not chase all chill from the air. Jorah dismissed Sam, Marsh, even Maester Aemon, who glided in with questions bright in his blind eyes. Father and son stood alone, save for Shara curled near the hearth like an overgrown cat, one whose breath occasionally set logs smoldering. Jorah poured 2 cups of mulled wine, hand steady koi. He offered one. Jorah accepted. They drank in silence. Finally, Jorah spoke. "You were always rash," he began, voice softer now, "but never without heart. I would have forgiven your debts had you asked." Jorah set cup down. Debts were only part. Shame weighed heavier. He glanced at Shara. "I sought gold to buy pardon, and stole fire instead." Jorah snorted. "You stole trouble. Yet trouble is what this world needs. Winter marches, boy daito. Rangers vanish. My ravens carry dark whispers. Shadows with bright blue eyes, half-remembered nightmares waking. A dragon at my side may tip scales. Nasan, you would accept me then, even after." Jorah's gaze held his. "Night's Watch pardons nothing, because it judges nothing. Here, a man's past ends when he takes the black. Would you?" The question coiled like a whip. Jorah had dreamed of clearing his name, reclaiming lands, perhaps even glimpsing Lyness again. Swearing the oaths would end that. Yet standing beneath the wall's shadow, he felt worldly wants recede like tide. He knelt. "I will, Father. I pledge my life, for long night or bright dawn." "Now?" Your sigh seemed both weary and relieved. "So be it." Jorah rose to take vows at the weirwood grove beyond the wall. But morning brought new turmoil. A raven from Eastwatch bore dire tidings. Lannister galleys landed at Maidenpool. Banners flying Baratheon's crown and lions side by side, commanded by Sir Kevan Lannister. Their purpose: apprehend traitor Jorah Mormont and claim the dragon for King Robert. Jorah's council gathered in the mess hall, voices low. Some urged sending Shara further north, beyond men's reach. Others argued to parley. Offer the dragon in exchange for men, provisions. Jorah watched Shara through narrow arrow slits, seeing her glide over the treetops beyond Molestown. She was no prize to be bartered. Gior turned to him. They'll march north. If we deny them, they may brand the Watch traitors. Yet if we yield the beast, we weaken ourselves. Let them come, Jorah said, and let Shara greet them. Aemon's blind eyes seemed to focus on his voice. Fire in war is indiscriminate. Castles burn, innocents with them. Nepin. Winter's children heed neither crown nor innocence, Jorah replied, remembering ice-blue eyes under pines. Choose your terror, Maester. Plans were forged. Bowen would ride south with ravens pleading neutrality. Sam would scour archives for lore on dragons aiding the first men. Meanwhile, Jor tasked Jorah with training Shara to precise command. A sword swings only where the arm leads, he said. Teach her your arm. Thus began weeks of drills. Jorah wore cowhide wrapped in chain, endured blistering heat as Shara learned to temper flame, to halt mid-gout, to aim. He rewarded her with slabs of aurochs roasted on bedrock, stroked her jaw ridges, whispered Shara again. Brothers watched in equal parts fear and fascination. Tarly measured wing beats per span. Pip wagered how many barrels of oil her flame equaled. First snow arrived one dawn, dusting wall and courtyard in glittering white. Jorah led Shara to the southern archery yard and marked straw targets at varied ranges. With hand signals he guided her. Raise wing, snarl, hold. She obeyed, unleashing bursts that incinerated each bale. Steam hissed, ash drifted. Crows cheered. Days later, a horn sounded twice. Approach of southern riders. A column of crimson and gold spears wound up the King's Road, banners snapping in the north wind. Kevin Lannister rode at the fore, visor up, eyes cold. Beside him, a yellow-haired squire carried a white banner. Parley, Gior, Jorah, and a small honor guard descended beyond the wall's shadow. Meeting halfway, Shara perched high on the battlements unseen. Snowflakes spiraled between two wary camps. Lord Commander, Kevin greeted. I come under King's orders. When Jorah Mormont has stolen crown property, a dragon's egg hatched in defiance of royal edict. We demand his custody, and the beast. Jorah's voice rumbled. The Night's Watch answers to realm, not to crown. Yet we are sworn to harmony. The accused has taken the black. Kevin's brow knit, thought. Criminals cannot hide behind crow cloaks. Take it up with gods, Jorah answered. They accepted his vows. Kevin exhaled mist. The king will not stand idle while dragons threaten his peace, Lord Commander, nor while traitors roost at his wall. Jorah's expression iced. Ask Robert who defended the realm when dragons last flew. The Watch stands guard still. Speak your threat plainly. Kevin's gaze shifted to Jorah. You would doom your brothers for one man's crimes. Before Jorah replied, the sky rumbled. Winds parted clouds as Shara dove, vast wings chopping the air. She halted above the parley, screeching so loud horses reared. Her shadow engulfed both camps. Kevin's men scrambled, shields raised, though heat had yet to drop. Jorah stepped forward, palm up. Shara settled behind him with earthquake grace, tail sweeping snow. Sir Kevin, Jorah called, voice carrying. I counsel caution. Dragons choose allegiance as they will. This one answers to the Night's Watch. Abominations answer only hunger, Kevin spat, though sweat beaded his brow. Robert's decree stands. Any dragon to be destroyed on sight. Jorah looked to Jor. The Lord Commander nodded once. Jorah inhaled. Flames roared skyward, a column of emerald-kissing cloud. But none licked the ground. Heat washed over faces, a warning more than attack. Kevin's banner charred at its fringe, gold lion blackening, threads smoking. Silence fell but for snow hissing to steam. The Lannister lord gathered reins, cheeks flushed. So be it, he muttered. The king will march. He signaled retreat. Crimson Line withdrew, hooves muffled in slush. Back atop the wall, Jor watched banners shrink. We have bought time, not victory. Jorah stroked Shara's smoking scales. Time breeds victories. Jorah's stern facade cracked to half-smile. You speak like a ranger. Night fell, bringing auroras dancing green and violet across ice horizon. Shara watched them with tilted head as though greeting kin. Jorah stood beside her, wind tugging his cloak. From below, Castle Black's torches flickered. From beyond, the haunted forest whispered. Lannister steel and Winter Whites both gathered. Yet for the first time, Jorah felt aligned with purpose broader than shame. He turned to the dragon. We still need one another, you and I. Name or none, blood or flame, we'll face what comes. Shara blinked slowly, as if agreeing. She unfolded wings, and without warning, sprang into the night. Wind beat thundered over the wall, mingling with distant wolves. She soared higher, circling the glittering ice rampart, before vanishing into star-streaked dark, a ghost of green fire trailing behind. Jorah watched until her light faded, then breathed the frigid air and smiled. Legends did not forgive lightly, but they also did not abandon those who embraced their weight. Soon enough, Shara would return. So would the storms. He turned toward the stairs, oath heavy on his tongue, sword at his hip, heart aflame. Whatever the long night demanded, he would pay, though coin was rusted, though past was ash. In winter's reckoning a Mormont stood, and dragonfire burned at his side. Okay. The wall's great ice face swallowed the rattle of portcullis chains as the parley party filed back through the tunnel, every step echoing like a hammer against Jorah's ribs. Once safely inside, the gate clanged shut, iron bolts driven home with ringing finality. Shara settled atop a buttress of black stone 20 feet above their heads, wings mantled against sleet. Her great eyes tracked each brother until they vanished into archways or stairwells. When the last black cloak disappeared, she exhaled, steam blooming in winter air, as if her lungs breathed their own low fire. Jeor dismissed the escort, but bid Jorah and Maester Aemon follow him to the King Tower keep. Samwell Tarly shuffled behind, clutching a sheaf of parchment so tight his fingers blanched. Inside, the corridors smelled of spruce kindling and boiling beef. The old bear's solar stood austere, a bare plank table, a half-melted tallow candle, a single map of the gift pinned to the far wall. Jeor removed his bearskin cloak, draped it across the chair back, and gestured them close. Kevin's report will reach King's Landing within a moon, he said. Soon after that comes royal decree, and then steel. He scratched beard stubble grayer than recent memory. We must answer before they marshal. Jorah braced hands against the table. Let me ride south. One rider slips through faster than an army. Where banners march, rumors multiply. I'll spread word lion ships burned our villages, poisoned wells. The North won't host them. Jeor's brows lifted. Deceit? From you? None? Politics, Jorah answered. Stannis and Renly still spar over scraps. The Lannisters press riverlands, add dragons to the rumor mill, and every lord will stall behind closed doors counting his courage. Maester Aemon adjusted the snowy cloth over his blind eyes. Stalling cannot hold winter at bay, Sir Jorah. Night's Watch oaths forbid entanglement in southern wars. Children of summer squabble while the long night approaches. His ancient voice quavered, but every syllable struck like stone. Our duty lies north. Sam cleared his throat. I found fragments in the annals. The first men allied with the children of the forest only after dragons pushed south from the 14 flames. Fire drew ice, ice drew fire again. It says battles raged across the Breakfoot Hills near the gorge called the Fist. The Watch was forged in those fires. Maybe a dragon's presence is a fulcrum. None-MC. Jorah absorbed that, imagining Shara perched on the ruin of some ancient battlefield, her green flame chasing shadows deeper than night. If the balance tips, we had better hold the lever, he said. Jorah nodded. Which means Lannister blades cannot claim the beast. His knuckles rapped the table. 7 days. That is my guess before advanced outriders reach Mallestown. We cannot fortify Castle Black for a siege and patrol the wall both. We won't have to, Jorah said slowly, the ember of an idea brightening. We hold their attention here, while Jorah and I take the fight to their fleet." Maester Aemon tilted his head. "You would fly. I cannot ride her," Jorah conceded. "But dragonfire at sea is older than any red wine galley. Ships burn easier than stone." Jorah grunted. "Burning Lannister ships risks open war." "War has risked us," Jorah snapped, frustration flaring. Sleet pattered the shutters like thrown pebbles. He drew breath. "Father, you once told me the wall's stones remember every oath. We keep ours by defending the realm. If the realm threatens the Watch, we remove the threat. Not for ambition, but survival." Sam swallowed. One man and a dragon against a fleet? Better odds than the Watch has had in years. Jorah's gaze weighed him long moments. "Take Ghost," he said at last. "And Grey Wind with the Rangers on the west flank. If darewolves will run with dragons, Lannisters will see omens enough to choke their courage." He pressed fingers hard between his eyes. "Leave at first light. No banners, no songs of glory." Snow veiled the world when dawn came, fine as sifted flour drifting across the courtyard. Brothers gathered by the stables, their faces pale lanterns behind wolf fur hoods. Jon Snow stood beside a mottled gray direwolf almost as tall as Jorah's shoulder. Ghost regarded the dragon with silent, unblinking eyes. Jorah flicked her tail, uneasy yet intrigued, lowering her head to sniff the great wolf. Ghost did not flinch. Instead, he stepped forward and brushed his muzzle against a scale near her cheek. Snow crackled where frost met lingering heat. Jorah let out a soft woof, something like acceptance. Jon clasped Jorah's forearm. "Bring her back alive. You'll need her when the snows deepen. And perhaps she'll need me," Jorah said. "Keep the wall safe until we return." They set out through the gate in a wedge of rangers. 8 sturdy garrons laden with provisions, 2 pack sleds drawn by shaggy frost-clawed dogs, and at the fore, Jorah astride a black courser Jor had once ridden to Winterfell. Jorah cantered beside him on all fours. Flight would wait until she reached warmer updrafts near the coast, where broad wings could lift her weight without exhausting muscle. Ghost trotted silently at her flank, each step measured, his white coat glowing against snow-laden pines. The wildlings, watching from shadows beyond the tree line, would carry tales of a frost-white giant leading a green dragon south. Fear, Jorah hoped, would outrun them to the Lannister camp. They marched 2 days without sighting foe. The old King's Road wound past ruined watchposts choked in snow. At dusk of the 3rd day, they topped a ridge and glimpsed the glitter of sea, pale steel under bruised sky. In the distance, sails clustered like a field of poppies. Red for Lannister, gold for Baratheon. A dozen galleys anchored in the Bay of Maidenpool, their masts stabbing at clouds. Campfires dotted hills above the shore, and banners drooped in the windless gloaming. Jorah called halt beyond sight of sentries. Shara's eyes narrowed, pupils slitting against salt breeze. Her tongue flicked. She tasted tar, pitch, ripe for burning. Rangers unpacked spyglasses. Bowen Marsh pointed toward a promontory where a squat fort crowned the cliffs, a lighthouse repurposed into a signal tower. Lanterns already flickered there, and silhouettes busied along parapets. "Signal lamps to King's Landing," Bowen muttered. "They'll summon reinforcements the instant alarm sounds." Jorah studied the tower. Stone, no higher than the wall's 52nd step, but thick enough to laugh at arrows. Yet above the lantern deck rose a wooden turret, roof shingled in cedar. One spark could render it a pyre. He looked to Jorah. She shifted restlessly, flame licking at her nostrils. He laid a hand on her neck, felt heat pulse through veins thick as his wrist. Night fell fast. Cloud cover snuffed moon and stars, leaving only the campfires and the lighthouse beams sweeping the bay in lazy arcs. Jorah gathered the company in the lee of a rocky outcrop. "We strike before dawn," he said. "Rangers will harry the beach, draw eyes seaward. Jorah and I take the tower. When you see its roof blaze, pour arrows of pitch onto the ships. The dragon's flame will follow." Bowen hesitated. A single bowman won't slow a galley once its oars bite water. "Then, strike the oars. If they cannot maneuver, tide will carry fire to fire." He turned to John's direwolf. Ghost sat unblinking, as though already aware of the plan. Jorah knelt. "Keep the dragon from overreaching. She trusts you." Ghost's ears twitched in acknowledgement. The hours until dawn stretched taut. Rangers rubbed oil into bowstrings, checked fletching, whispered prayers to the Seven or the old gods, or both. Jorah sharpened Maeg's Valyrian dagger, until the edge shimmered. Each drag of stone hissed inside his skull, like wind through ice canyons. Shara dozed curled near the coals of a low fire, but at each creak of leather her eyes slid open, luminous. Before first light he roused her, strapped a leather harness round her chest, more symbolic than functional, yet gave him a handhold. She tolerated the fitting, though she rumbled when the final buckle cinched tight. Snow dust frosted her wings. She shook once and flakes disintegrated in mid-air. He mounted her shoulders as he had practiced, left foot braced behind the forejoint, hands gripping spine ridges. Her scales were hot enough to prickle through his gloves. He leaned forward, murmuring, "Shara, fly." It began with a quiver along her back, muscles tensing, wings spreading. Snow spun in eddies as she leapt, claws gouging frozen earth. 1, 2 beats, and they cleared treetops, gliding over jagged rocks. Wind knifed his cheeks, tears blurring the lighthouse ahead. He crouched low, bones rattling with each downdraft. Below, rangers ghosted toward the shore, black shapes against white. Fire arrows waited in oil-soaked troughs. On the beach, sentries stomped to keep warm, spears leaning idle. No horns sounded yet. They banked hard toward the tower. Shara sensed the updraft curling from cliff face, rode it, then folded wings partially, plunging. The turret roof loomed. On its deck, a lantern keeper looked up, mouth opening in a perfect O before green flame engulfed him. Shara's jet seared the shingles. They blazed like tinder. Jorah felt the heat roar past his legs, the sound colossal, devouring. He clung as she pulled up, banking away. The turret was already an inferno, smoke coiling into pre-dawn sky. Bells clanged in camp, horns brayed. Along the beach, Bowen loosed the first flaming shaft. It arced, struck a galley's sailcloth. Oil-soaked rope flared. Other arrows streaked, igniting hull planks. Lannister oarsmen scrambled, curses carrying across water. Then Shara returned, a comet of emerald fury. Her breath washed over ship after ship. Sails sagged in molten tatters, masts cracked. Flames leapt from spar to spar. Pitch barrels exploded, sending starbursts of orange against the green. Jorah guided her down the line. He glimpsed armored figures on deck loosing crossbow bolts skyward. Most fell short. One bolt clanged off a wing, embedding in scale but failing to pierce. Shara roared in outrage, and unleashed another torrent. The bolt red hot and flung away like a spark. Kevin's flagship, the Stag's Crown, sat farther out in deeper water. Its sides bristled with scorpions. Crew hauled at cranks, lining up a volley. Jorah urged Shara higher. The first scorpion bolt hissed upward. Shara juked left, bolt grazing her hind leg. Pain rippled through her form. Jorah felt muscles convulse under him. She snarled, rolled, then dove straight for the ship. "Easy," he breathed, but fury drove her. Flames spewed before they touched deck, washing over siege engines, blasting crew from rails. The Stag's Crown rocked under the thermal punch, decks buckling. Yet another scorpion released, a barbed quarrel as long as a pike. It hammered into Shara's chest, biting between scales. Her scream shook the skies. Jorah nearly lost his seat. Blood black as tar spattered across his cloak. Shara faltered. He clutched ridges, steered her skyward, away from the prow where spearmen jabbed futilely. She climbed. Wings labored. "Hold," he begged. "We'll mend you. Hold." She gained height, but wobbled. Wind tore at them, each wing beat weaker. Jorah scanned for refuge. The burning tower lay behind, the shoreline alight. But beyond the harbor mouth, slate cliffs rose where seabirds nested, ledges rough yet broad. He nudged Shara toward them. A final bolt whistled past, missing by inches. Then the Stag's Crown's forward magazines ignited, a bloom of yellow-white that shredded bow to stern. The blast hurled water half as tall as the masts. Debris rained down, spar fragments still aflame. When spray cleared, the flagship listed grotesquely, stern sinking swift. Other galleys cut lines, oars churning, desperate to flee the harbor. Flames chased them, fed by spilled pitch riding waves. Rangers' arrows still found targets. Oil slicks turned the sea to a churning mirror of fire. Jorah reached the cliff and crashed upon the ledge, claws scrabbling. Jorah slid off, knees buckling. He steadied himself, then examined the wound. The bolt jutted a handspan deep. Black ichor oozed, sizzling seawater into steam. He gritted teeth, grabbed the shaft. "I'm sorry," he murmured and hauled. The bolt slid free with a wet pop-potty. Jorah's head snapped, jaws wide, not at him but toward sky. Agony vented in a blast of flame that scorched rock. He tossed the quarrel aside and pressed wool padding, impregnated with pitch and pine sap, into the hole. Fireblood hissed, but began to clot. Her breathing slowed. Down in the bay, chaos. 4 ships burned to the waterline. Another drifted ashore ablaze. The remaining 5 scattered under ragged sails, crews rowing like men pursued by the stranger himself. On shore, camps smoldered. Rangers faded back into woods before Lannister soldiers could mount a counter. Yet victory balanced on a knife edge here on the ledge. Jorah's wand smoked. Each throb shook her frame. He whispered old Bear Island lullabies. Ghost appeared, having bounded along shale, eyes wary. The direwolf nudged Jorah's arm, then sniffed the wound, lips curling but silent. He lay beside the dragon, warmth against her side. Jorah's eyes closed, breathing steadier. When a thin sun climbed, Jorah surveyed the bay. Lannister banners smoldered. A handful of survivors crowded the ruined quay, staring seaward at charred masts like blackened teeth. Wind carried their shouts, fear, not rallying cry. No ships remained seaworthy to chase the Rangers north. He exhaled icy breath. They had won a battle, not peace. Still, each victory buys another dawn, his father used to say. He cleaned his blade, wiped drying blood from Jorah's scales, and waited while gray gulls wheeled overhead. By noon, the dragon stirred. She rose slowly, stretched wings. The wound glistened but no longer bled. She shook herself, sending shards of dried ichor flaking. He approached with caution. She bumped his shoulder with her snout. No anger, only fatigue. Relief surged. "We fly home," he said. They took flight as dusk-painted clouds rose gold. Ghost raced the shadow on the shore, keeping pace until cliffs fell away and forest swallowed him. Jorah vowed he would find the direwolf again by the wall. The Rangers regrouped 5 leagues inland, horses fresh despite fight's adrenaline. Cheers rose when Jorah skimmed overhead, whole and aloft. That night, they camped beneath ancient oaks. Rangers sang low songs of the Dawn Age around a muted fire. Bowen Marsh carved tally marks into his bowstock. Ships burned. 6. Enough to cripple Lannister River supply for weeks, even months. Jon's direwolf rejoined them near dawn, coat dark with salt spray, but alive. Return took 5 days. Snow deepened, tracks filling behind them. Twice they found butchered elk stripped to bone by things not wholly wolves. Footprints showed elongated toes with claws of ice. Each time Jorah snarled, flame flickering until night retreated. At Castle Black horns sounded thrice. Brothers lined battlements, cheering as if 1,000 men returned, not 20. Jorah waited in the yard. When Jorah dismounted, his father grasped his shoulders. "Reports reached us last night," Jorah said. "Lannisters retreat to King's Landing, their fleet ash. Robert's in drunken rage. But Storm's End banners rise in the south. Stannis denounces Lannister aggression at the Watch. The realm squabbles with itself." His eyes shone grim satisfaction. Your dragon threw a torch into dry kindling. Inside the hall, brothers thronged Jorah, clamoring for tales. He fed them truth sparingly. Courage of rangers, fury of flame, the tower's lantern collapsing in sparks. Sam scribbled every word, quill scratching frantically. Later, in the quiet of the rookery, Maester Aemon tended Shara's wound with a salve of pine tar and powdered obsidian. The blind maester traced scales gently, awe softening his lined features. "I served 3 kings of dragons," he murmured, "yet never touched living flame." He paused. "Tell me, sir, when you ride her, do you feel her heart?" "Yes," Jorah said, "and my own, Sharper." "Do not forget which is which," Aemon warned gently. "Dragons are fire made flesh. Fire is hunger unending." Winter tightened its grip. The wall's curtain of ice grew talons the length of spears. Shara roosted in a cavernous niche, carved halfway up the knobbled face, her breath steaming from cracks like furnace smoke. Brothers below no longer quaked at her flights. They saluted, tipping hoods when her shadow swept over training yard. Some swore training improved, as clumsiness invited scorching reprimand. Pip joked she served as the drill master's whip of flame. Rangers ventured beyond the shadow tower bearing dragonglass spearheads, forged after obsidian deposits were uncovered near Eastwatch. Sam found instructions in the ancient scroll fragments. Blacksmith Donal Noy hammered shards into arrowheads. Jorah sparred nightly, teaching men how speed bests brute weight, how fear can freeze arm faster than any winter. Yet darkness gathered beyond the haunted forest. Wildling scouts brought word of tribes massing under a banner of poured shadows, a horned giant shape woven of night itself. They whispered the name of Mance Rayder, king beyond the wall, and spoke of a storm of ice riding behind him. Jorah listened, dread coiling. Then one frosted dawn, the horn at Eastwatch blew frantic. 3 short blasts. Others. Ravens rose black against gray sky. Wings mirrored in Jorah's wine cup, where he stood watch on the parapet. Jor ordered muster. Within hours, 200 brothers marched east, Shara wheeling overhead, her healing wound now a pale scar. They reached Eastwatch by moonrise. Snow whirled in mad swirls. Wind howled through arrow slits. On seaward horizon glaciers groaned, cracking like thunder. Runnels of ice slipped into the inlet, birthing fog that clung low and heavy. Cotter Pike, lean and scar-pocked, greeted Jor with a curt nod. "Scouts vanished on the shivering sea," he said, voice nearly lost in wind. "We found tracks where beach should be, frozen glass, prints like spider legs." That night, Jorah climbed the watchtower to study the gloom. Far out, beyond shifting sheets of ice, blue lanterns bobbed, ghost lights dancing where no men sailed. Squinting, he made out shapes, not ships, but forms gliding on the sea's frozen skin. Humanoid yet elongated, strides silent. Others? He leaned forward. Shara's voice rumbled behind low growl. Her eyes fixed same lights, pupils narrowed to slits. She hissed. "Soon," he whispered and stroked her neck. At dawn, a horn blast shattered the hush. The sea ice near the breakwater cracked. A mist wall advanced. Inside moved figures pale and silent. Brothers stirred, arrow knocks, clicks echoing. Jorah gripped Valyrian dagger, mounted Shara. Heart thundering. Jorah's voice rang from the wall walkway. "Loose!" Arrows whistled. Many found marks, but whites did not bleed. They climbed ice floes, scaling steps in unnatural silence. Then the others appeared. Tall, armor like crystal, swords thin as moonbeams. Frost trailed each footstep. Shara surged off the rampart, wings propelling them into frigid air. Jorah pointed her at the ice bridge forming from breaking sea. She spat emerald flame. It met blue frost with a hiss like dying worlds. Steam roiled. Whites blistered, limbs curling, but shards melted and reformed. Another raised its sword. The ice condensed midair, crafting javelins of rime. They flew. One struck Shara's wing joint. She shrieked, faltered, but held. Jorah's breath fogged inside helm. He guided her lower. Flame raked across the platform, where others marshaled. Frost armor cracked under heat. One figure shattered. Shards scattering like glass in gale. Yet others glided forward, unaffected, swords raised. On the wall rampart, Jon Snow and his direwolf fought whites that clambered over the edge. Ghost tore a corpse throat, black blood splattering snow. Jon's longsword clanged useless on ice armor until he plunged dragonglass into eye socket. The white convulsed, collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Jorah circled again, but wingbeat slowed. Blood, thicker now, clotting slower due to repeated strain, oozed from the new wound. Jorah's heart hammered. They could not sustain repeated frost hits. He scanned ground. Near the breach in ice he spied tar barrels stacked along palisade. He tugged reins, pointless but habit, and leaned, urging. Jorah swooped. Rangers below recognized intent and heaved barrels onto ice. Arrows lit fuses, tar ignited, puddling into viscous inferno. Jorah coaxed Jorah to breathe. Her exhale set tar into roaring wall of emerald. The ice bridge liquefied, breaking the advance. Whites trapped upon it plunged into sea, struggling in black water before freezing solid, bobbing like grotesque statues. But the others did not flee. They regrouped at far edge, raising arms. The sea froze anew, 12 figures spread along line, spear points aloft. Blue light gathered, crackling through the air, condensing into a shard of solid cold. Ice thunderbolt hurled toward the wall. It struck midway, blasting a chunk of ice the size of a farmhouse from the parapet. Men screamed as they tumbled. Jorah roared back, voice defiant. Jorah felt rage flood his chest. Heat built below him. The dragon inhaled so deep her ribcage flared. Then she exhaled a cone of fire, brighter than sunlit copper, hotter than forge white steel. It struck the center of the other line. For one breathless moment, blue and green clashed, colors pulsing. Then green won. The central other dissolved, armor running like water. The blast shattered its fellows, icy limbs flung sky high. Frost magic collapsed. The new bridge cracked, sundered. A howl rose. Not human voice, something older, carried by wind until Jorah's bones vibrated. Across the bay, atop a distant iceberg, a tall shape watched astride a creature of skeletal wings. An ice dragon? No, a wyvern of frost, scales translucent, eyes burning cold. The shape lifted a spear. Jorah growled, fear mixing with fury. Jorah's horn sounded retreat. Brothers pulled back along ramparts, plunging breaches. Jorah steered Jorah to the steps, heart pounding. The frost wyvern remained distant, but its gaze cut like hoarfrost. The shape upon it raised a horn carved from what looked like spiral glacier. The sound it blew rolled over sea like doom. Ice flows shifted, massing. A wall of frozen water lifted, forming a crude bridge half a league wide. White surged across as if commanded by the storm itself. Jorah landed beside Gior. We cannot hold, Jorah admitted, voice raw. This place falls, the coast opens. We must collapse the passage. Tar alone won't halt that tide. Jorah stared at Jorah, panting. Blood oozing, yet flame still smoldering in throat. We collapse it with dragon fire, he said. Jorah squeezed his arm. You'll die. Not if she flies higher than their reach. I guide you with archers from below. Father, this is why she hatched. Dee. Jorah looked at the advancing army, then nodded. Go. Jorah climbed once more. Jorah lurched skyward, weaker but determined. The frost wyvern turned, flapping toward them. Its wings shed frost feathers glittering. The rider wreathed in spindrift, raised a javelin glimmering blue. They closed in screaming winds. Jorah gripped harness, daggers locked. Jorah's eyes reflected starlight. She dove. The frost wyvern met her. Claws of icy crystal slashed. Jorah rolled, torch breath attempting to catch, but the wyvern veered. Again they clashed, talons ringing on scales, sparks of frost and ember. Jorah spotted the horn slung across Ryder's back. Source of command, perhaps. With Meg's blade he leapt, slicing air. He caught the rim of the horn, severed, strap. Horn tumbled into space. The rider hissed, face a death mask. Frost blade swung. Jorah ducked, steel scraping helm. Jorah snapped jaws, ripping icy membrane from wyvern wing. It screeched, momentum faltering. Below, whites reached midpoint of the frozen bridge. Brothers hurled torches, but wind killed flame. Jorah shouted wordless command. Jorah banked under the wyvern, then soared straight up. Gravity pulled Jorah against her spine. At apex she stalled, wings cupped, and turned nose down, diving toward the bridge like a falling star. Air howled past, cold burning cheeks. Jorah felt her chest inflate. At 200 feet she unleashed everything. Flame so bright, darkness fled. The searing cone hit ice, bored through. Boiling water beneath, exploding upward in plume of steam and molten shards. Bridge shattered, whites hurtling in pieces. Boiling water engulfed them. The blast wave struck walls of Eastwatch, rattling stones, but brothers cheered. The frost wyvern, maimed, tried to climb, but wings betrayed it. Jorah wheeled, spewed flame. The wyvern crumpled, plummeting into churning sea. The rider tumbled after, spear spinning away into abyss. The horn smashed upon rocks. A peal like cracking glaciers echoed. Then silence. Jorah landed atop the highest tower, collapsed, chest heaving. Jorah slid down, knees buckling. Brothers surged, voices exultant. Jorah arrived, eyes wet. "You broke their lance," he whispered. "You shattered Winter's spear, this day." But Jorah's gaze fixed on Sharras wound. Icicles spread along edges, creeping despite heat. He pressed gloves. Frost bit. Maester Aemon ascended, bringing obsidian powder salvador. They smeared the paste. Sizzling fissures slowed, but Sharras' head drooped. Days passed. The bay refroze, this time with shattered bodies entombed. No lights approached. Ravens flew. Victory at Eastwatch. Dragonfire victory. Northern lords stirred. Manderly sent word of ships pledging grain to the watch. Karstark riders delivered furs and steel. Even a raven from Stannis Maester carried blunt praise and promise of men. Yet Jorah weakened. Frostbite inside flesh, spread unseen. Jorah sat vigil each night in the Tower Eyrie. He spoke of Bear Island's sunsets, of pines whispering, of Lynessa's laughter long ago. He sang old lullabies until voice cracked. John Sam, ghost, kept him company, silent. On the 7th night, Jorah opened her eyes, pupils slitted but calm. She nudged him with tender strength. He stroked her scaled cheek. Steam no longer rose from nostrils, inner fire banked low. She shifted, wings rustling. He sensed intent. Last flight. He unlatched harness with shaking hands. She crouched, then leapt from parapet into star-cloaked sky. Jorah climbed the crenelle and watched her silhouette arc above the wall, trailing faint glow. Higher she climbed, past the aura waves, shimmering green. At zenith she held steady. Flame gushed, brief sunburst illuminating lands for miles. Then the glow faded, tail streak burning out. She vanished beyond horizon, lost to night. Grief speared him. Yet deep inside, warmth glowed. Not fading but settling. He pressed hand to chest. Heartbeat steady, stronger. Perhaps a spark remained within him now. Fragment of dragonfire gifted in farewell. He descended stone steps. In Yard Brothers, solemnly awaited news. Jorah met his father's eyes. "She's gone," he said, voice rough. Jorah placed calloused hand on his shoulder. "A dragon gives life even in death. The wall stands." Jorah exhaled. Snowflakes swirled around torchlight, each spark mirrored in his tears. He lifted his gaze to the northern sky. Aurora flared brilliant emerald, the color of dragonfire. He squared shoulders. Night remained long, war longer. But within him, a storm of dawnfire burned, and as long as it did, he would guard the realms of men, for his house, his brothers, and the memory of a dragon named Jorah, who taught an exiled son how to rise on wings of flame.